Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I'm going to do my 2025 State of the Collection video. Before I get going with what watches are in the collection, I do have one to point out that has left the collection. It was a Parmigiani Fleurier Kalpa Tonda. It was my dress watch Parmigiani and white gold model, but I went ahead and traded it towards a different dress watch this year. I've only added 3 watches into the collection since 2025, and we will touch on those when we get to them. And I want to go ahead, though, and start with one that's been in the collection a while. It was a gift that I received, and this is my G-Shock. And you can probably tell from the strap that I've got on it. This is one of the Barton straps. Back when I think they have an easier method now, but you had to hook on the extra hardware and all of that. But you can see the watch has been through a lot, or at least the strap has appeared to be through a lot in terms of my owning of it. This square model G-Shock is the GWM 5610. And is my go-to watch for outdoor activity stuff that would be like mowing, working on the car, basically things where I want to wear a watch, but I have some concern that the watch might get damaged. Might have a scratch or two in the mineral glass on this, but not very noticeable. Watch has done very well for me and is a nice piece and is my only digital watch that I have in my collection. I'd never actually owned a Swatch before. I used to own a red dial watch, and I went ahead and there was an Orient, a dive watch. It was a little big for me, so I got rid of it. And now I have this instead. This is the Flower Bay is the name of the watch. It's a destination watch. You can kind of tell from the strap and everything. This one was based for Hong Kong retailers to sell. I actually got it on Joma Shop. You can find them there still last I looked. But since I never owned a Swatch before and it had a pretty vibrant red dial, and it's so thin and lightweight as a quartz, it's still a fairly large watch, but not nearly as big as the dive watch that I had, the Orient Cano. So in terms of a substitute, it's a good alternative. I don't wear it very often. It's my most recent watch that I've received, but you can already probably make out that I've got scratches in the plexi already and such. Like this thing is, I see why they're as inexpensive as they are, given the plastic buckle and all the rest of it that goes on. But it is a comfortable watch, and I do think it looks good. And so just for something that's a sometimes watch, I think it was a pretty good option to go ahead and consider. Next up is one of the watches my dad gave me. This one is a Bulova Accutron, but it's not the Accutron everyone thinks of when they hear about the Accutron. This is the 94C52. He got this from his job. I think it was just one of the options after he'd been there for a certain number of years. And gold filled, I believe, is what the case is, like 10 karat gold filled, or I don't remember the carats anymore. I don't really wear this watch, quartz watch, a little small for me. And while it's probably a nice traditional dress watch size, I believe this is 34 millimeter. I don't really care for how it wears on my wrist, so I probably wear it maybe twice a year, but it's just something mostly that I keep around to keep in the collection itself. A couple other sometimes watches, I'm going to pull them both up at the same time, I have 2 Spiro Agnew watches, which I always find is to be a bit of an interesting story that I don't know if everyone would agree with me on that. You probably see that the nice shiny one on the left isn't running, but the one on the right is. So the one here is a paper dial one, and this is the one I wear. I don't wear the watch very much. It's a pin lever escapement. I received it as a gift from a friend of mine, and I tried to service the watch myself to get the movement working, but I could only get it intermittently to function. So I actually did find a watchmaker in the area who was willing to service this watch. And as a pin lever escapement, these were sort of disposable movements, the precursor to affordable quartz. So they weren't really designed to keep going. But there's a whole fascinating story about how Spiro Agnew got a watch. He was a vice president of the United States. And I have a video on the channel going over that. So again, I only wear it maybe a couple of times a year. I wind it up on occasion to make sure it can keep running and all of that. But anyway, they had to turn to the paper dials at one point because the watch was so popular. They originally came on enamel dials, and that's what this one is. And again, the story behind this, just briefly, is I received this as a gift from the family that created the watch. And it was because they saw that video I did of the history of the Spiro Agnew watch. And they contacted me, and ultimately they had found a new old stock version of the watch and didn't come on the strap. And so they sent it to me. So it doesn't run because the movement's never been serviced. And I just keep it as a collectible at this stage. Next up, I got a couple of Mr. Jones watches. So this first one is Step Right Up. It's a quartz watch. I wear it on occasion. This is actually the second Mr. Jones watch I received, and it's the first one that Ryan Claytor designed. This was limited to 100 pieces, and a friend of mine found it and actually gave it to me as a gift. And so, as you can see, it depicts an old-fashioned carnival shooting gallery. And the way the time is told, let me get in here a little bit and zoom in again so you can and focus it so I can let you see the time telling a bit. But the top little targets are the hours, and then the lower ones, you see the 10 and the 5, those are the minutes. So right now it's trying to tell you it's between 12:05 and 12:10, and it's 12:07 right now as I'm recording this. So that's why it says it this way. So those are just discs that slowly rotate around, driven by a quartz movement. I like the art style of it. I know Ryan Claytor from the pinball hobby, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get this watch myself when it first came out. They just sold out way too quickly, and I woke up far too late to achieve that. But ultimately I was able to get a hold of one thanks to a friend of mine. And one I was able to get, because I learned my lesson after that first one, was the second Mr. Jones watch that Ryan Claytor designed, and that is Ricochet. This one is in the main catalog, but this is one of the original 100 limited editions that came out. The gilt-wrapped robots are the highlight of this, not to mention this is a mechanical watch featuring a jump hour. The back box of the pinball machine tells the time. So again, if we were to zoom in, and let me see if I can get it to autofocus on the time telling a little bit, you can kind of see it's hard to read the time, and it's part of the reason I don't wear the watch a whole lot other than to pinball events. But the hour marker is very sunken in, and that disc will jump as the time changes, and then a more slow-moving, rotating disc that doesn't jump tells the time. So you see we're getting close to the 12:10, so the 10 is starting to appear into view. Also, this limited model, it did have a running seconds. It doesn't really let you tell the seconds, but you can see at the lower part of the dial, these inserts, as what they are called on the pinball machine, and the top of that pop bumper actually have a disc, and it sort of does a little Morse code thing that rotates around. They went ahead and took that off on the regular catalog model. It's something that most people wouldn't even notice anyway, but it's a nice little Easter egg for people that got one of the original 100 that were produced. Next, I want to jump to my dress watch collection, and that's my favorite collection, actually. I wear dress watches a lot for work, so I have a good opportunity to take advantage of them, and I tend to like the classical styling. This one being on bracelet and made out of titanium, it's probably my least dress watch of my quote-unquote dress watches, but I tend to wear it like a dress watch, so I am featuring it here. And this is the Citizen line. This is the AQ 4100-65W. This is a limited edition. This is the version where and I think they've done some others since then like this, but there are sort of platinum flakes that are applied to the washi paper dial that gives it that snowfall style effect. There's actually a clear disc above that paper dial, and that's where they've applied the hour markers, the Citizen logo, the little chicken that represents the Citizen line. This is actually a perpetual calendar, even though you only see the date. It does fully keep track of whether or not it's the leap year and all the rest of it. And it'll enter hibernation mode. This is a solar-powered watch. There is eco drive. It's hidden behind the washi paper to get enough light. I've never had it actually run out of charge because it will go to sleep eventually and sort of set itself at midnight, and then it'll spin all the hands and everything to get into the proper positioning once that time period is done. But very lightweight watch. Not my most comfortable watch, but it wears pretty well. I'd say the bracelet isn't great. The clasp, it leaves something to be desired, but I do like it better than my experience with Grand Seiko. So overall, it's an enjoyable watch. Watch enthusiasts, when I show pictures of this, tend to compliment it quite a bit. I think a lot of people like the way these Citizens look, and I think it's an interesting look that looks quite a bit different than Grand Seiko, but also feels like they put in quite a bit of effort versus what you would see out of the main line of watches, which are also very nice eco-drive watches. Speaking of Seiko, this is not a Grand Seiko, but this is a regular Seiko, I guess we could call it. This older model, another one of my dad's old watches. This is the one I always remembered him wearing. Not on this strap. He wore it on a band. In fact, I'm not sure I'm going to keep it on this brown strap. It's just the black strap broke on me the last time I wore it just a few days ago, so I've thrown it temporarily on this ostrich strap until I get out a different strap. This had quick release, so I was able to get the strap on quickly so that it could sit back in the watch case. But this Seiko is the 7N43-9070. So an older quartz model, PVD gold colored. You can see the scratches in the bezel from all the impacts, because this was his everyday watch until he retired and decided he didn't want to wear watches anymore. So I actually replaced the crystal with another mineral glass crystal myself on this watch. I tried to do some sapphires, but I kept cracking them. It was my press that was crooked. And by that point, I was so tired of buying sapphire crystals, I ended up buying mineral glass ones as well to practice on. And when I got one in, I was like, I'm done. I got that taken care of, did the battery swap, changed the gasket, and was like, okay, this is enough for me. So anyway, I do tend to wear this one to work quite a bit, I would say. Not one of my top 5 watches for the year, I don't think, but I do wear it fairly regularly. So it's one that I pull out quite a bit from the watch box. Now moving to one of the new watches that I got for 2025. So we already did the flower-based Swatch as a new watch. So this one I got just before that one. And this is a Glashütte Original. And this one specifically is a Senator Sixties. Now, you probably noticed that it's a 60s design. It's got kind of those Timex Marlin numerals around for the 3, 6, 9, and 12. What's interesting is that's now in the vintage lineup, but this one actually is old enough, I think it's from around 2012 or so, that it was actually in the Senator series, which has a very different look associated with it now. It had that same different look back then, but it just wasn't. People just don't think the 60s is in the Senator lineup, but it used to be. This is actually a gold-cased version, a sort of a rose gold watch with a black dial. There are a lot of steel versions available if you like this look. Also, if you like this look and you don't want to spend Glashütte money, definitely check out the Timex Marlin, because you'll get very similar numerals out of it for a much more affordable price tag. But I really wanted a dark dial dress watch. And normally when I try and get luxury dress watches, I typically get them in a precious metal. And so when I saw that the 60s was actually available used in gold with a black dial, I thought it looked pretty good. This is another one that watch enthusiasts, when they see the dial, do tend to give it a lot of praise. Pretty simplistic. The case itself is entirely polished. Like there's not a lot of subtlety to this. It's just a very straightforward approach and a very conventional dress watch aesthetic, though a larger size than the old days. So it fits reasonably well on my wrist. My wrist size is 6.75 inches for those that are curious. But anyway, been wearing this one quite a bit this year. Very comfortable. It is an automatic, so the movement is visible through the case back, but definitely something to be desired, because you can see that it's very much smaller than the case. Moving on, an older dress watch, older in terms of, probably not older in terms of production, though possibly, but one that I've owned for a longer period of time. This is a Breguet. This is my Breguet Classique. This is a 5177 BA. It's BA because it's yellow gold. Highlight, of course, is the dial. This has got the basket weave pattern to the dial that they hand guilloche with the engine turning approach. So it's probably my best looking dial. It's the one that took the most effort by a person to create. I really do like the basket weave pattern. Very long lugs on this watch. Wears bigger than you might think based off of its profile and all of that. Comfort-wise, not actually all that great. Not an uncomfortable watch by any means. It's small enough that it's not going to be particularly bothersome, but there's a kind of a lightness to it. The rotor is gold, but it in and of itself feels pretty flimsy. The watch itself, I don't know. When I read about it, I expected it to feel a lot more substantial than it actually is. In some ways, this makes sense given that it is a dress watch and how it highlights and all that. But the time setting, the date setting, I like the way the dial looks, but most of the other aspects of the watch don't particularly impress me. So that's all to say, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep this one in the collection. I do tend to wear it. I do still tend to wear it, but I do a pretty good job about rotating through all my dress watches. So this is one that I'm considering maybe if I see something else that catches my eye, going ahead and letting go of out of the collection. Now this is another new dress watch. This is the first new one I got in 2025. New as in new to me. It is a used watch. And this is a Patek Philippe Gondolo. Specifically, this one is the 5124J. This watch, the Gondola line itself is an interesting series of watches. A lot of them are this rectangular shape, and Nowadays, I believe the entire Gondolo line is targeted towards women. There are six-figure watches with gems and such in them, but they used to be targeted towards men, or at least some of them were. And there were a number of takes on the Art Deco look in this format. Now, you can see that the case, this is yellow gold, the case is curved. And so I actually enjoy wearing this watch a lot more than the Reverso I used to own. I was really reluctant to get rid of my Reverso, but I decided that if I was going to get another Reverso, I'd like to get it in precious metal. And I figured I could let it go. Plus, it was one of the larger Reversos and it wore a little long. Didn't overhang my wrist or anything, but just it felt awfully big for a rectangular dress watch. That being said, it was my best hand-winding experience watch, and it is a better hand-winding experience than this watch is, though this watch, as I've used it more, has gotten more comfortable, and it is a hand-wind only mechanical watch with a shaped movement, unlike the Cubitus, I might say. I'm not showing the backs of all these watches because I don't feel like blurring out all of the serial numbers, and I think that's the best practice, so I tend not to do it when I shoot one of these videos. But I wanted to let you guys have a chance to take a look at it. I really like how sharp and aggressive the Art Deco is on this. You can see that the hour markers are very sharp. They all turn into sharp points as you move closer towards the center of the dial. The hands themselves are sharp. The only Arabic numerals numeral, I should say, is the 12 right at the top, which I think balances out pretty well against the running small seconds. Not a particularly long power reserve. Watch doesn't hack. A fairly basic dress watch, all polished, kind of like the Glashütte was. So again, very straightforward. But this one's going all in on that Art Deco look. And it's a look I really associate with JLC or Jaeger-LeCoultre and their Reverso. But I actually think that Patek pulled it off better in this particular model. There are other gondolas that I do not like the dial design as much, but this one really resonated with me and wasn't something that was initially on my list. But when I saw one available, I decided earlier in the year to go ahead and pull the trigger. My last dress watch is my favorite dress watch. I've had it for a few years now, and this is my one A. Lange & Söhne watch that I have. This is obviously a Lange 1 for those that are familiar with the brand. Specifically, this is the 101.032. It uses the older movement, the one that's got the multiple little center islands. Again, I'm not showing the back because of the serial numbers, but the it's you can tell the new movements apart from the older moves. Old movement, not that impressive technologically, other than the 3 days of power reserve. This is not my best hand winding experience. In fact, I might be able to. I've always told myself I want to show you guys this, but there's a lot of back play when you wind this. So I've left it at about half power reserve so I could try and show you. But if I turn the crown and let it go, see how it spun back? I'm sure you did, but let me do it one more time, because it always does it. So really, I mean, it is actually winding it up. So even with that back play, we are actually progressing the power reserve, as you can see, up more and more and more. But a very weird experience. This was not a modern movement, even when this watch came out. But it did allow them to achieve the golden ratio that they were shooting for, with the big date in the upper right-hand corner, towards the 1 o'clock position, the power reserve towards the 3, the small seconds running down towards the 5, and then over towards the 9 o'clock position is where they actually offset the hours and minutes. This is my favorite watch in the entire collection. I would get rid of everything else I owned before this, including my nostalgia pieces. It's just my favorite thing to wear. Not the most comfortable watch per se. It's a little over 10 millimeters thick, but given all the complications, it wears very well. This is a rose gold version with a silver dial. Strap's not the best. There's a lot, this isn't really the best at anything. Not the best in terms of the finishing of the movement and stuff, and the finishing of the dial. Finishing the movement of what I own, you could probably argue it's the best. Lange & Söhne puts in a lot of effort on all of their movements, though the Patek has a pretty good finish as well for its model line, but it's just my favorite to look at. I really like the dial. I think with the anti-reflective coating, you kind of get that sort of purple hue here when it shoots off. But in the sun, even in this artificial light, the way it plays with light appeals to me. It appeals to me more than the Breguet with the basket weave pattern. It appeals to me more than the simplistic matte black of that Glashütte. It's just the way it all is, the sum of its parts, even though I would probably struggle to pick any part other than maybe movement finishing as being the best out of my collection. I have better hand sets in my collection, better movements in my collection, all the rest of it, better accuracy in my collection. but it is my favorite watch. I traded 5 watches to get this plus cash, and which was very difficult for me because to me, like putting that much into one watch was very, very difficult. It was the smartest watch move I ever made, though, because I really enjoy this watch and don't see it leaving my collection. Okay, and so now let's jump to the more sports watch style watches, the go anywhere, do everything, sports watch, whatever you want to call them, the watches that most people are actually into, not dress watches and stuff. So anyway, this one was a gift last year. A viewer from the channel actually sent this to me because they remembered I talked about it and never ended up buying one myself. But this is that Seiko SRPK 17. This is the one that was limited to 15,555 pieces, which I had no end of fun making fun of. However, I did like the way the watch looked quite a bit. This is my first Seiko 5 I've ever had. It's a throwback to one of their early models. I think it's a throwback to the first Seiko 5 Sports that they did. Not the first Seiko 5, but the Seiko 5 Sports. Bracelet's actually really comfortable, something I'm not used to saying in terms of Seikos. Friction fit bezel. That's part of the reason I never bought it. I wasn't sure how it would feel. I was afraid it would feel like a Vostok. It actually is really smooth, but holds its position quite well for a friction fit. So I enjoy that aspect. I wear this from time to time. Not the most worn in my collection. Sometimes I'll even wear this one to work, though, because it has a relatively slim enough profile that I can get it under a cuff. And it's one of my few day dates that I have. Most of my watches don't actually have the day listed. So it's one I like to grab from time to time and is just a fun piece to have around. Next is my Rolex Explorer 2. This is a 16570. This is the watch I've owned the longest. I've had this over 19 years at this point. Got it, obviously, before I got into collecting watches. Back when the only nice watch I knew about was Rolex, and I was able to walk in and buy one used because this was not a very popular model. I'd say it's still not all that popular of a model. It's definitely more popular than it used to be. You can see there are a lot of scratches and stuff in it. I've taken it in for service one time when it started to noticeably run fast. But I used to wear this watch. It was my only watch. So I used to wear it to do anything, mowing, oil changing, all the stuff I said I do with the G-Shock. I used to do with this on. I didn't think about it. It's like, I own a watch. I'm going to wear the watch. I don't baby it. There's no point at this stage, given what all has gone into it. But I definitely don't tend to wear it in the same environments like I used to. But I used to still, this stayed in my top 5 quite a bit. I'm not sure it's going to stay anymore this year. We'll see in January when I do that video based off of my wearing of the watches. But it's my only GMT watch. So it's been my only GMT I've ever had. Setting aside the G-Shock and the ability to program it. And the Citizen has a jumping hour. So I can actually jump it, but it doesn't actually let me see a second time zone. So when I travel outside of my time zone, I almost always wear this watch because it's the one that I can easily set to be local to wherever I'm going and then still keep track of my time zone. So it still gets a notable amount of wear. This was a watch I was actually wearing today. This is my Baltic Aquascaphe. The model itself is called the Bronze Brown because the case is bronze. And I am getting some patina to come in. This is one of those aluminum bronzes, kind of like Tudor does. And I used to have a Tudor Black Bay bronze, but at 43 millimeters, it just wore too big for me to really like. So they now have one that is this size, but I saw Baltic had this. I'd heard good things about Baltic, and I went ahead and decided to pick it up. I do have it back on its original strap. It off-gassed a very sweet smell that nauseated me. So I left it in the box for a while and used to use a different strap, but now it's okay and it doesn't bug me. Nice, crisp bezel action. This is my only dive watch currently in my entire collection, in fact. I don't typically wear dive watches all that much, but I like the tropical brown dial. I think it looks good in this format. I like the style of bronze. I like the size of case. So overall, this is just one of those watches that was, I'd say more of an impulse purchase, but I got it before all the tariffs and everything. So it's one that I do tend to pull out of the case quite a bit, though I usually only wear it on weekends, such as now when I'm recording this. Now here is a more sport style watch that I actually do wear to work fairly regularly. So I had a Parmigiani that I mentioned that I got rid of that was a Kalpa Tonda. It's the old fashioned version. that was more of a dress watch. This is the current lineup that they do. This is the more basic version of that, though they do have a dateless one for those that prefer that. But this is a Tonda PF micro rotor. This is the PFC 914. And so it uses a micro rotor. So the watch itself is quite thin, as you can see, integrated design to it. So you still have the famed Tonda teardrop lugs, sort of a barley corn guilloche. This guilloche is not done by hand. It's not stamped. It's actually done by a CNC machine, I believe, on a brass plate. But that's how they get that intricate. I'll see if I can get it really. I have to keep tapping the camera to get it to refocus. That might be a little too close since we're not in macro mode. But it plays with the light quite well because of that. That texturing gives it an interesting look, which otherwise is a very basic looking watch. Delta style hands, so they're skeletonized, but there's no loom on this watch. The skeletonization just stays open. You have the markers applied for the hours, and then you can see the chapter ring is marked for the minutes. No seconds hand, a date at the 6 o'clock position. The bezel's actually platinum, but the rest of the watch is steel, aside from the rotor, and the rotor's platinum as well. And then, of course, the dial, I believe, is made out of brass, and then whatever the parts are of the movement are the parts. It's not like a gold movement or anything. But anyway, interesting watch. I actually like it. It's got a good water resistance and all that. So it's one of those sort of stealthy fancy watches. Bracelet is very supple. This is the best bracelet I've ever owned. I'd say the bracelet is better than Rolex bracelets, including the current edition ones that I've felt. However, the clasp is not a micro adjust clasp. So you're probably going to get a Rolex to fit better than this, unless your wrist happens to fall into a perfect sizing for this. But there are the links are small. So the look at that articulation, it's incredibly comfortable on wrist. I just wish the clasp was a bit better or had a bit of micro adjust, or in the words of a famous meme, why not both? So there's that. Then there is this Moser. This is a Moser Pioneer Funky Blue. You can see from the very blue dial. Of all my traditional watches, I'd say I've gotten the most compliments out of this. Probably because the dial just catches the light so well, coupled with the fact that this is a pretty big watch. But this is specifically the 3200-1205 if you want the reference number. Black DLC case. You can see the fairly interesting sort of vented sides to the case flank that they've done. But the crown, I believe, is titanium, but the rest of the watch is steel and it's just coated diamond-like coating, which I've actually scratched messing with the straps. I had to get a smaller strap. I actually use one end of the strap is regular length and one end is a smaller length, but I couldn't punch my own holes because it would be very obvious if I got into this sort of rally strap section to do that. Quite accurate movement. This is a nice, interesting, feels weird in a winding way, but it winds quite well. Really quick to do. No date, so it's very fast to set. Loom, there are very small pips around at the edge of the applied markers towards the chapter ring. They don't glow all that brightly. The hands are more notable, but it's not like a loom monster or anything. But the dial gets a lot of attention simply because it plays with the light so well, and that's the aspect that drew me to the watch. I do tend to wear this one a decent amount, and even though it's like a 43 millimeter watch, and probably I think it's my largest current lug to lug that I've got, you could see that it doesn't overhang the wrist or anything. Now that I got it on a smaller strap, when I had it on the original, I thought I was going to get rid of the watch right away because it was like this. It was loose. But when I got it snug on the wrist, it wears well. It's big. I do not wear this with dress shirts, but it wears pretty well. I've contemplated maybe getting rid of it because I generally don't gravitate towards watches that large, but this year, at least, I've been putting a lot of hours in on it and wearing it quite a bit. And then finally, the last watch of the collection is this. This is a Zenith Chronomaster Original. These watches take a bath secondhand, so if you ever want to buy one used, not a bad deal. I'd read you the reference number, but the reference number is massive, so you'll just have to see it overlaid. But this is the one with the tenth of a second for the running or the chronograph seconds hand. So I'll start that for you so you can see that starting to whip around the dial here. This is my only mechanical chronograph watch, kind of obvious since I said we're now on my last watch in the collection right now. This is the only second mechanical chronograph I've ever owned. And I had a really bad experience with a Hamilton one. But I went and took a chance on this because I really liked the vintage look. I like the tricolor dials. There are other versions of the Chronomaster original that I like. I like almost all of them, quite frankly. And I decided to go ahead and give a chance with the Zenith, was it's the caliber 3600 movement in terms of how it operates. So watch wears quite well. The clasp itself is kind of sharp. So not a huge, it doesn't micro adjust at least. The clasp could be better finished on some edge. Once it's a fix, it's not a big deal, but not a particular highlight, that clasp. Also, I think a lot of you're probably noticing from the sheer amount of fingerprints and scratches that you will see, but polished center links, generally not seen as a winner move. They look great in the case, and then when you start to wear them, they start to show that wear, something that I think Omega is going to learn about on their new generation 4 Planet Oceans. But nonetheless, I enjoy the watch. It fits really well on my wrist. So like this is the sort of sizing. Like, I think this looks really good. Actually, a lot of people seem to really appreciate this watch quite a bit, though I don't tend to see them around very much. But it's just one of those things that I found pretty compelling. So anyway, that's my current collection, or state of the collection, or both. Not sure if I'll get anything else in December. Normally, it's not unusual for me to consider something, and I'll just cover it in the next video. I've generally only done these around November, December of every year, so I don't tend to do them in between. I don't get enough watches for it to really warrant it. Don't know if I'm really looking for anything specific at this point. I've had my eye on getting a Vacheron. I've looked at the 1921s. I've looked at some of the malts in terms of dress watches. I've also contemplated Chopard a few times, both on the dress watch side from the LUC collection. Also, some of the Alpine Eagles have caught my eyes, so I've thought about those. I've been on a list at the AD for a Rolex No Date Submariner, so if that ever happens, then maybe I'll end up getting that. Thought about getting another Zenith, maybe not a chronograph, but a different Zenith, but not super high on the list. And then in terms of more affordable options, I've looked at seeing maybe getting something clearance-wise from Karl F. Bucherer now that they're out of business. I've also thought about getting another Zodiac now that Fossil filed for Chapter 15 bankruptcy, and I'm hearing that a lot of those are starting to show up. I had one for a while, and I went ahead and got rid of it because I wasn't wearing a lot of dive watches. But if I could get one at a really low price, I might go ahead and jump back into that brand, even though I don't really love the STP movements. But anyway, that's just kind of my summary of kind of where I'm thinking of going. But that's it for this video. If you want to leave thoughts on any of the watches, feel free to do so. I'll go back and read those. And otherwise, I appreciate all of you taking the time to watch this. I hope you found it interesting, and have a great day.